This episode is powered by Vantelira. We go inside scaling operations, fix the process, and build the system that keeps it running. One of my favorite things to work with and decode is data. You need good data to make good decisions. And this applies to product, to software, to services businesses, any industry. And today, I want to talk about how inside an operation, data gets gathered or should get gathered. Let's dive in. I am Easy, and this is the forward deployed operator. I hope you have your coffee with you because this is going to be a very interesting talk about how data is not necessarily appropriate when we need to make decisions, to have decisions taken that will impact a business. Any business size, it doesn't matter. Everybody needs data. Several times in my career, I have been involved in working for companies that produce physical product. And I have been doing a lot of inventory planning throughout these years. We do inventory planning for decision making in terms of how much investments a company need, how much inventory are we gonna keep, which means how much space you're gonna have to plan for. There's several decisions that are tied to inventory planning, and I want to go back to exactly where this planning stages start. So, to get those products made, you normally need something that we call raw material or components, depending on the stage of which they are. Now, imagine that to produce your finished product, you need different components and raw materials. Depending on what exactly you're producing, you might need 10, 20, thousands of parts in different quantities at different stages, and they are sourced normally from different suppliers. They have different lead times. These suppliers also have different contact methods, and so on. I could go on and on forever because there's so much to unpack there of data points that can get mingle and mangle and that would need some clarification. But I want to concentrate on one specific question. How do you know exactly what to buy? Well, you need to make a plan of how much you're going to produce. And that plan needs to be pretty close to your sales. Enter the sales forecast. There's a lot of people that do not like forecast, they don't trust it. And the first thing that I want to clarify here for everybody to know, forecasts are not 100% accurate. If your forecast is 100% accurate, something is wrong in your calculation. Forecasts are done to give you an idea on how the business is going to perform so you can have a pillar to stick your plan to stick your inventory to stick your sales performance to. And of course, we work to make the sales forecast as accurate as possible. And it will have a lot of massaging and a lot of decision makers chipping in. But you need to understand that forecasts are not 100% accurate. Once it's clear, then you can move on what happens when how to build the sales forecast. So going back, we're talking about product based businesses here where we need to plan for inventory, which means you need to understand how much you're going to produce. And that trickles all the way back to how your cells are being captured. Where are your cells coming from? Are they coming from different sources? Are they formatted in the same way? When you added a product last year or two products, how many you added, you not necessarily didn't give it a proper identified or it was not categorized the right way. There are many different stages when data can get broken and it will result in a improper sales forecast, hence not a properly planned inventory. And we call it inventory. Inventory can be in a real estate environment. These are assets. This is your inventory of apartments that building or buildings that you have or the apartment units that you have. In a clinic, it's inventory of beds that you have available for the ICU. And then the sales forecast is what's going to come in to fill in, to take over those specific units. So what do you do when your sales are coming from different platforms or different sources of data? What do you do when this data is not properly formatted? How do you connect the dots? This is where I come in. A forward deploy operator embeds in your organization, and we understand and we untangle the spaghetti of how your operation actually runs. And then we go ahead and plan the cleanup, the design, we measure, we analyze, we improve then after we've done the first three steps, and then we establish control measures so that can run on its own. That one missing identifier, if you didn't give it a name, an SKU, a proper identifier, a nomenclature that everybody understands, it's never just that. Oh, we didn't have an SKU for this product. That trickles down to sales that were not captured, inventory that didn't get planned. So you will end up with an unsatisfied customer, and we don't like that. For a business to grow, you need to have satisfied customer. This is what make a scale and the very basics of revenue driven organizations. This problem doesn't care how big you are. I've seen it in a founder's five spreadsheets, and I've seen it in global enterprises running three different platforms and an ERP that doesn't necessarily communicate with all of them. From you can have it on a scaling large organizations that recently acquired different ones, and they all have different ERP system feeding data to a warehouse that nobody really fully understands or trusts. The scale changes, but the shape of how you fix it doesn't. That one product that you didn't identify end up living under a different name in every system that touches it. One name in the storefront or the order desk or the order management system, and another one in the back end, the ERP, the one that is used to plan the inventory, to plan for capacity, to plan for allocation of resources. It's an abbreviation that somebody typed into a regional spreadsheet, a legacy code in in the finance export. I'm telling you, it could be 100 different breaking points, whether it's four tabs or four enterprises systems. The result is identical: several names, one product, and a forecast that has no idea they're the same thing. So you got to answer the simplest question in operations: how many did we sell last quarter? And you can't because you don't have the right data. Not because you don't have data at all, it's because you haven't cleaned it up, you haven't attached each system to the right SKUs. You have too much of it in too many shapes, sitting in too many systems that were never designed to agree with each other. Add channels, add currency, add returns, bundles, samples. The order that got entered twice, the acquired business unit that codes its product in a completely different way. And you start to understand why so many forecasts are, to put it kindly, fiction, and nobody really trusts them. Now, this is the moment where a lot of people and a lot of organizations reach for a tool. If they don't have a forward deployed operator working with them, or somebody that is really process improvement and continuous improvement driven, meaning we look at the source. Where is the what is the source of this problem? And there are methods, different methods that based on Lean Six Sigma um, methodology that can help identify w- where is the problem really coming from, not what you think it's coming from, not what the symptoms are showing, really to understand what the root cause is coming from. And if you don't have that, normally you will try to reach out for a tool, a software, and that looks different depending on the maturity of the enterprise or the company. For example, a founder will buy a forecasting app. A mid-market company stands up a demand planning module within the ERP system that they have, and an enterprise commissions a data lake and six-figure analytics platform. Different budgets, same instinct, and it will be the same trap because if you point a smart tool at data that doesn't agree with itself, you don't get a smart answer. You get a confident wrong answer faster. And now it's just wrong at a scale. Garbage in, garbage out. I learned this about 20 years ago, going to university, studying industrial engineering. It is garbage in, garbage out. The first thing that you have to do is to clean up your data. This is just, it creates just a bigger license fee. So when I come in, I don't start with a tool. I start with a shovel. Process before tools. I call it process archaeology. You follow the data back to where it's actually born before you automate it or integrate a single thing. Caught action. You follow the data back to where it's actually born before you automate or integrate a single thing. And that discipline is the same whether I'm sitting next to a founder or inside a manufacturing plant that sources hundreds of millions of components. I've done it both. The questions do not change. And there are three of them that I ask over and over and over again until I get the right answer. Where does each number come from? Who or what system touches it before it reaches the sales forecast? And which version is the one we all agree to trust? Because that also happens a lot. There is a sales forecast that gets produced by a team, and then that it gets transferred to another team. It could be a person, it could be five people, and then it gets transferred. That gets massaged, it gets presented, everybody agrees on it, and then it gets massaged again. And when I say massage, it's really just modifying numbers here, numbers there, just to clarify. Um, that last question of which version is the one that we agree that we were going to trust is the biggest one. And it's really a question about your system of record. You have to name one place that is the truth. Version 5, version 7, whatever it is, everybody signs up. For an early stage brand, the that might be the common platform. For a mature organization, it's the ERP governed by real master data management. Either way, the principle is identical. Everything else, other channels, other regions, other system, maps back to that source where you said it was going to be living in. Not stored in parallel, map back, reconcile, one version that wins. Then you build a boring, unglamorous thing that quietly saves the whole operation. A clean master data. And I've done it. It's crazy how in 20 years working with product, service, software, it doesn't matter what it is that you're building, what it is that you're selling. The clean master data is the one thing that can break everything. Every product needs to get one identifier, one definition, one owner. In a small business, I've said it simply: no SKU, no sale, no exception. In an enterprise, it has a fancier name: item master governance, a data ownership model, an onboarding workflow that creates that product consistently across every system before it can be transacted. There are even SOPs or documentation on how the nomenclature of the SKU needs to be produced every time that you introduce a new product in the market. There's product management people for this. Same rule, but more rigor. because at scale, an ungoverned identifier doesn't create one bad row. It just corrupts every downstream report that rolls up through it. And I have a funny story. I remember working on at an enterprise once, and there were different SKUs for the same product. Normally, there are processes established where you the two SKUs, they need to have like a translator. So in the ERP system that is being used, you can have your current SKU, and there's a field that gets populated with the equivalent SKU. Well, it happened that that SKU did not have that information. Somebody forgot, there was a mistake. It happens. These things happen all the time. But we were able to catch it because there was a master data governance team that was looking through all of this data. And regretfully, we didn't catch it on time back then. Okay, not caught. I want to tell the story differently. The order got to the, we got an order from a customer. The customer was asking for the SKU that was not populated, okay, in the field. So on inventory, that SKU was showing zero. So the customer service person told the customer, sorry, we don't have that in inventory. And the customer started calling other people, reaching out until for some reason the email got to me. I was leading the supply chain organization at that point, and I was kind of the police of the inventory, to say it clearly. I had to go back and understand. Okay, what happened? I traced back the story of that SKU, and I ended up figuring out. No, I ended up discovering that the SKU was never populated on the new one. We did have it in inventory, and it was normal that we were not going to have the old one, so to speak, because we were already transitioning the new one. But we didn't want to lose sales, so we left the old one active for customers to order it. And in theory, the master data team should have entered the old SKU into the new one, so when the orders came in, it will get translated automatically. So we discovered that it was a quick fix. We fixed the system and we told the customer, here's your product. We're going to get it shipped expedited for you. That way, the wasted time that we spent looking for the answer on what happened and looking for if we actually had the product can get washed off. The customer was happy, walked away, and we made sure that the SOPs indicated that information for when other products were going to get outdated or out of commission. And if you're listening and you have a small business, you might think, "Oh my God, why did just didn't walk to the warehouse to see if they had the product or a similar one?" First, some people don't have the luxury to have their warehouse inside their where their offices are. There's 3PLs that are located all the way across the country to be distributing to the where the customer base is. And in other cases, it is such a large organization that you cannot just walk out to the warehouse and look for the part. There is thousands of SKUs with thousands of units in it. So this is why it's so important to have somebody that understand the how things work and that can trace back to the root cause of what happened that SKU was not properly identified. Once your sources speak the same language, so after we fix that SKU that didn't have the right information, the right the replacement, every product should be exactly one thing everywhere. Everywhere it appears, all the products needs to be the same thing. And if they were superseded or decommissioned, however you want to call it, they need to have that information in it. Only then you can build a proper forecast, because that SKU If we will have said to the customer, no, we don't have that product, or we will have sell it with the old SKU, we might not even be tracking that old SKU anymore because it's superseded. We don't see it. But you need to have that translation so you can transfer those sales to the new SKUs that might have zero sales in theory because nobody was looking for the new one. Now, when you tell procurement what to buy and when, you're standing on data that you can actually defend. Once you have your translation properly done, your data mapped, you can actually tell the people that are going to be buying the raw material and the inventory to produce your final product, you can say, this is what I need, whether that's one supplier or a global sourcing network. What I want you to take from this, and it holds at every level of maturity. Gathering data isn't a spreadsheet task or an integration project that you bolt on at the end. It's a design decision you make at the beginning. The forecast or the fancy platform, that's just the easy part. The plumbing underneath it is the real work. Get that plumbing right, and the forecasting stop being guesswork and it starts being a decision you can stand behind. A tool can only ever be as good as the process it sits on top of. Fix your data where it's born, not where it starts hurting you. That's it for this one. Follow the show so the next episode finds you. And the newsletter goes out every Tuesday. Link below. See you next time on the Forward Deployed Operator.